everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of E&Ftv. Today, we're actually joined by a good friend of mine, Nick Moffatt, who is actually Group Director of Revenue over at EasyHotel. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me, Tom.
So I suppose, first off, for everybody that sort of tunes into these episodes, it's always interesting to hear how the UK leaders in revenue management really came about it, you know, where they started, how they came into revenue management, and I suppose, most importantly, how you got into the job that you're in now. So I suppose, first off, if you could take us through that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so actually, like most people in revenue, I didn't set out to have a career in revenue management. In fact, I'd never even heard of it. I started off studying engineering at college, and whilst I was working on the engineering course, I took a part-time job in a hotel, washing dishes in the kitchen. I then moved up to bar manager, and all this was in the background after I was doing my studies in engineering. And at the end of the sort of course, I actually stayed really in a hotel while I was looking for another role. But interestingly, I really began to enjoy hospitality, and I suppose I took my career further from there. I was very lucky at that certain point where I was able to go and work overseas for to travel as a revenue advisor in the resorts. So my job was sort of looking for new excursion opportunities, costing them up, putting the package together, getting it contracted, and then actually putting it on sale and selling a target of it. So that got me into the commercial element of things in hospitality. And then I went back to the UK to work for TUI Travel in sort of their head office as a yield executive. Then I became a yield manager, and further on moved into revenue management through Bourne Leisure, onto Hilton, and then Millennium Hotels, where I was the regional director of revenue for Europe, which was, I suppose for me, was my highest level role up until today. And, you know, I had a big team there, a team of sort of 20 people, and we covered revenue management distribution for all of the European Millennium and Copthorne hotels. So it was a really exciting role that I enjoyed. And I'd probably still be there today, but, you know, I got invited to join the executive of EasyHotel because they were in an expanding company, or are expanding company. And, you know, the ambition to get 100 hotels open within 5 years of now was quite exciting, and the opportunity to develop the distribution, revenue, and also corporate sales, which falls under my team as well now. So again, it was another new area for me. Not completely alien. I'd worked with corporate sales quite closely in other places, but certainly to head it up and lead it, I think was quite an exciting opportunity.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, with the current climate, lockdown and things, I mean, what have you been up to during the lockdown period?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question, actually, Tom, because, you know, this has been a very difficult time for all hotel companies, I think, and people working in hospitality. And we were really fortunate that, I suppose, the first sort of 6 months of me being enrolled at EasyHotel, we kind of built the game plan of how we were going to change revenue distribution, introduce corporate sales, and open up some new booking channels. And we'd actually just got some contracts over the line with a partnership to set up the GDS, to contract with Hotel Res. I hope I can mention them by name, and obviously start working on the RFPs and start developing the corporate side of the business. So with all this coming across the line, literally 2 days, I think, before we were told to shut the hotels, we were able to focus the team on the connectivity side of it. And yeah, we've been implementing our GDS government and corporate programs so that they're now ready to go on sale for our own hotels. And phase 2 is franchise. We're currently working on some franchise hotels that will also launch as well. So when we come back, we'll be in some new markets.
Wow, so you've been pretty busy then during the lockdown period. I mean, why do you believe that's the right strategy to go with, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, that's another interesting question. I suppose coming from the bigger hotel chains and the sort of full service hotel chains, we have a very big corporate presence. But so one of the things I learned, certainly when I was working with brands like Hilton, when I was involved in the Hampton by Hilton openings, was that, you know, there is different sort of corporates for, you know, different comfort levels of hotel. So the budget sector still has good demand, especially for contractors, traveling independents who are looking for a sort of a good value but comfortable night's stay. Yeah. Our more recently refurbished product is actually quite surprisingly corporate looking and in the look and feel. So for me, it was a real opportunity to say, let's tap into this market that we've not really been in before. We've not really felt it was for us. But, with lockdown and COVID, I actually think it's even more for us now. So when we come back, we're going to be very present in that market. And because we don't have a lot of meeting rooms, or, we don't have restaurants and we don't have bars, it's going to be very easy to self-isolate in one of our hotels and to stay separate from other people. All our hotels are in very central locations. So, if you want to get somewhere easily without having to perhaps be in rush hour public transport, again, we're a very good option. And you can order sort of breakfast packs that get delivered to your room. So, I think we overcome a lot of the problems. Not only that, being in the budget sector, we're going to be good value for money. So from that point of view, I think a lot of companies strapped for cash, if they do need someone to travel, will look at an offering such as the ones that we're going to put out there in the market going forward.
I suppose with your experience prior to all this going on, but also, I suppose, more importantly, with all this going on at the moment, what advice would you give to others reviewing distribution currently?
Yeah, I think, again, another really good question, actually. I think for everybody, there's going to be limited demand, right, when we come out of this. And there's going to be a hell of a lot of hotels that are going to want to get back open because, if we don't get open, we don't have revenue and, we can't make any money. So getting the doors open is going to be key. I think from my perspective, I would advise anybody to look at all of the distribution channels and try to make sure that you open them wide, that you spread net wide, and that you look to pick up as much business as you possibly can through different sources. We can't rely on what did well for us before. We now have to go and fish in new ponds, right? And I think there will be, certainly the domestic market I believe is going to be probably stronger. Probably the leisure market, if you've got a resort hotel, perfect, very good. But certainly for those of us with city centre hotels, I do think opening up the distribution channels, looking for new partnerships. All of us have to also be cost conscious, so we want to reduce the cost of sale. Don't get me wrong, I think that's always the way forward. But it becomes more and more the job of the revenue manager to optimise the volume coming in versus the cost of sale and the ADR you can get. So we all need to be looking much more at profitable revenue management.
Definitely. It's interesting at the moment. It's one of these things with all the clients that I've been talking to now is that more than ever revenue managers are being looked at, and more than ever the role of a revenue manager is probably being more and more realised by every other department in the hotel industry. So it's a really good time to be a revenue manager, but also an incredibly difficult, and I suppose a lot of the days are incredibly long at the moment.
Yeah, I mean we have. If I look at a lot of the colleagues I know from the industry, and I'm not talking about from within my own company, but a lot of them are on furlough because there's not very much here and now trading to be done. Yeah, and I understand, companies need to keep control of the costs, because obviously that's really important at this particular point in time. But revenue managers are going to be needed back in fairly quickly as hotels start to open up, because ultimately, first of all, we've got to cover the costs of opening the hotel. We have to do that. We have to hit a break-even point. And then secondly, we have to try to get as much of the demand that's out there to come in, obviously at the highest price, but at the lowest cost of sales. So, this is definitely a very, very key role in any reopening strategy, I think.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. It really is a pleasure to have you on. And guys, take a look at who's on next week's episode.